a plan and a purpose for my life that's about more than just me. From grief to purpose. No, I am not my pain, and I'm telling you my journey of healing is gonna take me from grief to purpose. Turning my pain into purpose. From grief to purpose. Turning all my pain into purpose. From grief to purpose.
All right. Welcome back to the podcast. So today my guest is Patrice McBeath. She is a licensed clinical mental health counselor, the owner of McBeath Consulting, which provides individual and group therapy, community and corporate training and consulting. Currently, Patrice is in a capstone program where she'll be certified as an infant mental health specialist. She is the author of Finding Your Path, Healing from the Effects of Trauma, and that's important, which we're going to talk with her about today. So without further ado, let me welcome Patrice McBeath. Hi, how are you?
Oh, thank you. And thank you for the invite. It's great to be here, and I look forward to this deep conversation that we're going to have.
I'm so excited to have you here. First of all, I feel like we need to just kind of give them a little bit of context. So this is actually a part 2 of the podcast. I had the opportunity to interview Patrice previously, and we got into a bit about her book, and I wanted to definitely reintroduce the book again as the podcast has switched over and transitioned from that dose of encouragement to from grief to purpose, in the same context. More so, we're journeying from pain to purpose here. But I'll give a little backstory also, because me and you go way back. We go way, 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 way back. And I feel like it's important for people to know, just a little bit, about our journey. But when I say we go way back, I'm talking about way back into my 20s, because I'm in my 40s. And way back to early church days, like when I was just, wet behind the ears, a babe, just young life. But I just wanted to let you know that it's just so beautiful to see how you have just grown and blossomed into this beautiful, successful woman that you have become. I'm just beyond excited for you.
Yes, thank you so much. And I always keep track of how long we've known each other with Michael's age. He's turning 26 Thursday. So we've known each other for about 22 years. Isn't that amazing?
22 years. Okay.
Yes.
And, of course, life happens. And although we cannot talk and communicate every single day, as we've, connected and reconnected over the years. And I wanted to mention too, because you have 2 beautiful boys, 1 girl, we both had different, just things happen within our own perspective lives. But again, like to watch you just develop into what you're doing now is amazing to me. Like it's just beautiful.
Thank you. And to have you in my corner too, as a prayer warrior for me, because I call you and I'm like, listen, this is going down. I need some support right here. And it's been beautiful to have somebody you can reach back to. Like you said, good friendships does not mean that you talk every day. It's those ones that when you communicate, it picks up and it keeps moving, and there's no hurt, no harm, no foul. We're adults and we understand that life continues to go. And it's not like we're leaving each other on the sidelines. It's just like we respect, the progress that everybody is making.
Yes. Listen, you talk about pick up the phone and prayer warrior calls. My calls them were like, so girl, what happened was, right. Life. All right. But let's get into the context of your book. And before I get started asking you any questions, just for if they didn't catch it in the first interview, and if y'all want to go back and watch that first interview, you can find it on my website, www.thatdoseofencouragement.com, underneath her book title, an interview with Patrice McBeath. But what brought you to wanting to write this particular book?
So I smile when you said that because in life, we go through things and then we wear masks and we cover up all the hurt and harmful things that's happened in our lives. But for me, this was a turning point and I needed to get this out of me. I was sexually abused as a child. I was in a domestic violence relationship and I was struggling. And even in that book, I wasn't 100% clear with what had occurred. But in part two, I can't even say part two, but just the revision of this book, I'm being more forthright, putting my story in the beginning because I was pushing myself still underneath and I was ashamed and afraid of, just opening that part of me up. But that is a part of my story. And so this book, because we oftentimes deal with so many different things that we won't discuss, we don't talk about, and it shapes and forms who we are moving forward in life, but we're not living true and authentic to self.
That is so true. And I was watching an interview of a podcast, and I won't mention the name of it, but the person was saying just how transparency is important. And it just made me think like that's, or maybe think about how important it is for you even to be transparent with yourself. Like you were saying, we wear these masks, we put on, as the ladies, we put on the makeup, we put on, get our hair done and all these things, but how, what's really going on inside. And that's the important, I wanted to do your book again and reintroduce your book to my audience again, because again, it's within the title, right? It's Finding Your Path, Healing from the Effects of Trauma. So if I can, I wanted to read just the highlight. You know how I do my highlights from the book, right? And we're going to touch on it a little bit. I'm going to ask you some questions centered around it just so we can get like a little bit more depth about the book. So in chapter 1, this specific chapter is titled How Trauma Has Affected My Life. So it reads, sexual abuse for me robbed me of my permissive will. I stopped feeling worthy, valuable, or enough. My sense of self shrank to the idea that I was quiet, accommodating, and a good little girl. Then maybe I'd be like, or at least left alone. That mindset turned me into a people pleaser, desperately trying to mold myself into whatever others wanted so I wouldn't risk rejection or worse. So you're going like deep into like your story, which I love because it's like a lot of times we don't speak up. But if you can share a little bit about your journey, like let's go back to that point. Let's go back to that time, that little girl, if you feel comfortable in sharing. And when you wrote this particular thing, what was that time like for you?
When you said that, the biggest part that stood out to me was about your permissive will, because when you're experiencing something negative and bad, it takes away, and even being a child experiencing sexual trauma, it takes away your ability to agree to something. And we know that kids can't consent or agree to anything sexual. So now it kind of shakes and rocks your foundation of who am I? What just happened? Is this okay? Like, how do I see the world? So all of those things changed the way I saw myself, changed the way I saw other people, changed the way I saw the world. And so now I'm walking in this haze of, okay, it took away me. It took away my ability to consent. And so like without that being, what do I want to say? Without that being talked about, worked through, my voice was gone. And so I just thought, okay, I'm just going to be agreeable because this thing happened. I know my parents took care of it, but there was no other discussions around. You have the right to say no. You have the right for this. No one should do X, Y, and Z. And as a parent, I got on my kids' nerves about your private parts and your safe zones and your comfortable zones, and to the point where they were just like, okay, enough, Mom. But I felt that to be so important because we don't talk about those things in our communities. We don't discuss what's good touch, what's bad touch. So for me, it just took away all of that, and I didn't understand moving forward in life. And even becoming an adult, it was like, okay, I'm just going to agree. Like, I don't want to be noticed. I don't want to be the person that is standing out. It just made me into this shell of a person and not fully living true to self.
Now, during that time, did you or your parents, did they take you to therapy, counseling, or did you all do anything like that back then?
No, not back then. Therapy was not a thing. What happens in our house stays in our house. And it was handled on the outside of the house. But however, it's just like, okay, she's young. Kids forget. No, kids don't forget. And even if they do forget, it's stored in that subconscious, and it creates behaviors. And mine was more of a quiet behavior. So when we have children that's not misbehaving or lashing out or doing those things, we keep going. We look past it. Okay, she must be good. Now, understanding that there might be some other things, like who I was at the core of my being was already traumatized. And so I shaped and formed my whole identity around this small shell of a person. And so, like, on the flip side, I see children who have been traumatized, and they display those negative behaviors. They display those behaviors that people are like, what's wrong with you? No, what happened to that kid?
And so, I was just thinking, and of course, I know, as I'm thinking through it, just thinking how, it is that adults sometimes don't understand that we need therapy. But, it's cultural as well. Sometimes it is, what they experience growing up, like you said, what happens in our house stays in our house type of, mindset or way of being. And we don't understand what we're actually passing on, to our children. And like you said, children do remember, and that's subconscious. Like, I just thought of, like, it's trauma stored in your, subconscious. It's crazy, so you're now growing up, through years of life with just still, that stored trauma, within you, unsettled trauma.
Absolutely.
That's that.
And
So,
it brings me to thinking about, when you talk about the stored trauma and how we deal with it, we don't oftentimes deal with it. We just keep pushing, we keep moving. And it's like this whole thing that just can take over who you are as an individual.
Yeah, especially as an adult, you keep pushing more. So I think, well, I know I'll speak for myself, because you get to that point of work age, right? Where now it's not about per se what you have going on, but now it's about the bills, or it's about going to school, going to college or whatever. You're trying to get so focused to, be successful in life that you forget, like, you still have some unsettled things that you need to take care of within yourself.
Yes. And that's the truth.
All right. So, I have questions for you. So I have my notes, because listen, I don't commence it to memory, but I do have some questions for you. Now, my first question for you is, in your journey of healing from domestic violence and childhood sexual trauma, we may have touched on a little bit of this. What role did grief play in your process of finding purpose? Like, how long for you was that transition? Because, you have to go through those childhood years, teenage years, and so forth. So what was your process like?
And that is so deep when you say, because a lot of people don't think, okay, you out of that relationship now, you should be good. You're grieving what you thought life was supposed to be or what it should have been. You're grieving the idea of who the person was, because you didn't fall in love with somebody who was causing harm. You fell in love with whoever they presented themselves to be in that moment. And so you grieve all of those things. You grieve like parts of you that you felt like you lost through the transition of being in that relationship, because there is a loss. You're losing parts of yourself. You're losing identity. You're losing a person that you thought you were going to spend the rest of your life with, and just even friends and family who you may have separated from during that time.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And so just that grieving process, I had to go back to basics. I had to get back down to ground one, like identifying who is Patrice after all of this. And in that, let's go back, because the childhood abuse was never dealt with. So what did I choose? Something less than who I am, because I didn't feel like I was worth what I deserved. And so I went into situations that was not, healthy for me. But in turn, now I had to, once I left that and enough became enough, I had to go down to the basics and understand, who are you? What do you deserve? What are you truly feeling? And anytime I'm dealing with clients, we always do emotion identification. And the word that's not allowed in my office is, I'm good, I'm okay, I'm fine. No, you're not. Those are just buffers to get us through those hard questions, because who wants to deal with the crap and the pain? None of us do. We don't want to talk about that stuff.
Right. It's hard because it's, the hard stuff that we don't necessarily want to deal with, especially if you're not, you weren't raised like that. So it's hard to speak through those emotions, like you said. I'm glad you have that environment, in your office, the whole I'm good, I'm all right, type of buffer.
I'm like, what's an emotion word? We talking in emotions today. Like what?
Yes.
And a lot of people get upset. Oh my God, Patrice. Yes, we're going to go there. Because if you can lie to me all day long, but you can't lie to yourself. So what are we going to do? Like, what are we talking about here? Let's get down to the root of the problem. Because if we stay on the surface, we're not going anywhere. We're not doing nothing. And then just like you said, we get in this go mode of being the professional, the mother, the wife, the partner, with all the letters and acronyms behind our name. Yes, I had those letters and acronyms behind my name, and I was living an entire lie. And I even had people that say, well, you're a professional, get on your own couch. I need support and help to get through this. And it's important for us, even the great have issues and problems. We're not gonna bypass the human experience. And so being humble in who you are and being able to step back and say, okay, I need some support around this thing.
Yes, for sure. Because, like you were saying, we can't bypass this human experience. And sometimes, the human experience is going to come with all types of things, all types of, trauma, unfortunately. And it definitely doesn't have a target, like it doesn't come in, well, let me just attack, Black people. Let me attack white people. Let me attack Hispanics. Let me hit the Asians only, it's just life sometimes. So that's definitely true. And then back to like what you were saying too about like the I'm good type of stuff. I think sometimes people just don't you get so used to asking people, or they're used to people asking them, how are you? And not really wanting to know. Like, it's just a bypass question. I'm trying to go to my next thing. How you doing? I'm keeping it moving. I'm not really wanting to know how you are. I think people get used to people like that. So when they come across people like, you, and you're like, no, I really want to know, like, how you doing? Because I'm sure it makes a difference in a shift, in your office of the, energy that you're bringing, they are bringing. So that's important. That's definitely important. Now, my next question would be for you is, how grief can often feel very heavy when you're experiencing something, a significant loss. We always touch on, grief is not just the loss of a loved one. It could be the loss of self, relationships ending and so forth. How we handle that, is important. But sometimes people get stuck, in that grief. And that comes from not understanding how to process in a healthy way through those emotions. So it can come out in many different ways. And sometimes people just don't understand how it's coming out or why it's coming out. But how did you begin to move through the grief of the traumatic experiences that you experienced? And at what point did you start to feel that healing was possible? Was it like in your 20s, your 30s and so forth? Like, was it like a big moment that you're like, you know what, let me go in the therapy direction, or like, or if it was a spiritual direction, let me go, I don't know, seek out God. Like, what was it? And when was that for you?
For me, it was like when I hit 45. I was like, wait a minute. This is not okay. Because I was just spinning my wheels. I was doing all the things right, doing all the right things, but not feeling satisfied or fulfilled in my life. So I was like, I have to change what I'm doing. I have to be real with me, number one. And then I have to seek outside counsel. Yes, I've always gone to church. But then we know the layers when you're attending services, all of those things that come with that as well. Because sometimes we can get caught up in religion and tradition and not truly live fully to who God truly has called us to be. And so then again, that's another mask. So being 40, when I hit 45, I was like, I want to be free. I want to be free of all that, all of this heaviness, all of this weight, all of the expectations of what others want me to be or expect for me to be. No, who are you? What do you want out of life? And like I said, it went all the way back to ground zero. I started exploring me, dating myself, taking myself off, figuring out what I like to wear. What do I even like to eat? Where do I feel valued and loved? And if I'm not in those situations, I'm removing myself from them. So it was, and then even in that, that's grief, because sometimes when you're in environments, you think this is where I belong. But as you start uncovering things and being true to self, you notice that I was never even meant to be here. This is my space. And this space is hindering me. It's not allowing me to grow, move, or prosper. And then it's the guilt and shame that comes with, like I said, with being a clinical mental health counselor, going through some of the rough stuff. The shame, like how did I not see this? Sometimes stuff builds up and then it's like, whoa, this is what I'm working with clients on. And so I had to take a step back and look at all of those things and say, time out, flag on play. I need me more than all of this other stuff. And lo and behold, if I'm not received, that's fine too.
Coming to know yourself, like, you mentioned you came to it for yourself at the age of 45. I'm 45 now. And I mean, like they say, there's a sense of another level of a sense of self when you hit your 40s, right? Where you just get to this point where like, I could care less. Like, I'm about to do me, like I'm however God created me to be, that's what's going to go down. Like, if somebody has an issue with it, oh well, and so there's like a double freeing. And then I think that how you were saying you were you found healing at that point, because there's no age, to where it can start early or it can start late. I think that's important to the individual. Like, when do you recognize it and when are you willing to do more work? Because I'm sure there was some transitions of your level of the work that you were doing to it, and then life happens and you got to do more work, and then things are unveiled to you, especially through the education of counseling and learning. Because I know myself as well, like you were saying, you're learning this stuff, and then you're like, wait a minute, that applies to me, like,
Absolutely.
right.
Yes.
So that's beautiful. What advice would you give to someone that's just coming into the light that they need that healing, and how would you tell them to go about getting started?
First of all, it's not linear. It's not like you pop it in the microwave, you say 2 minutes, it's done. Absolutely not. It's a journey. It's seriously a journey. And even like where I'm at now, more things are being unveiled, right? And then I'm like, okay, that's the thing. I got to deal with that. I thought I was healed from that. Yeah, you healed here. Now there, like you said, it's an extra layer of healing, but you have to be open to it. And, there are a lot of things I was fine. Like, nope, I don't want to see that. And when you see yourself fully and whole, you can be a little disappointed because it's a lot to move around, and you have to hold yourself accountable as well. Because sometimes we made the choices to be in some of those situations, but being accountable does not mean you beat yourself up for it. Lesson learned. Now, what do I do differently? how do I honor myself differently? And so, like, truly identifying what your likes, your beliefs, your morals, your hopes and goals are in your life, and then setting boundaries around you, your space, your time, and your energy. And it comes with a lot of work. And best believe people are going to show you who they are when you start doing that walk and that process of establishing those things. Some that you felt should have been here or are going to be lifers, they're not. They're going to fall off. Because oftentimes, if people are not benefiting from us, we're no longer a benefit. And that's a hard place to be in and understanding. But leading without having anger and bitterness is even bigger than that. Because it's hard when you have experienced those things and people choose to walk away. Allow people to walk away, but also keep your heart pure and with love. Because it's not meant for you if they choose to walk.
Yes, like, that whole saying, people are in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. So don't get attached, solely to a person, and definitely don't get attached to the importance of your healing to, people, and what they think about, your process or whatever. But, let them show their true intentions. But let me go back to what you said, like how sometimes you have those blinders on. And when you're faced with like the reality of your process, you're like, I'm not gonna deal with that, not today, and you just keep it moving. I can, say that I've definitely been in that particular position, because being raised, had a great father, but he just wasn't emotional, so I had to learn how to emotionalize on my own, and then pulling from how my, mother did a little bit as well. But it's like, how would you, being a clinician, like, how would you tell someone that is having trouble emotionalizing, facing their own emotions? Because they just don't know, sometimes you just don't know how to walk through it. So that's when let me just keep it moving with life. Like, I'm finna go to work. I'm finna, start the business. I'm finna write the book. I'm finna, do whatever, raise the kids. Like, I don't have time for me. How would you walk somebody or give steps to somebody that needs help in dealing with their own emotions?
Yeah, and that's so funny because I have clients currently that we're walking through that process with. And and I use humor because I love to meet people where they're at. You come in, we're going to have real deep conversations. You may get upset with me because I'm going to say, why are we over there in that ditch? Why are we doing this? And it's just having those deep, hard conversations about behaviors, how we react and respond to things. Because oftentimes, if we're reacting and responding to something, it's to guard our hearts and to protect us from not being hurt. So our shut off, a lot of us got cold cutoff games. But why are you cutting people off? What are you protecting yourself from? And so just managing things and with those questions, it opens up doors to so many different avenues, because now you have to take an inward look and say, yeah, why did I cut him off? Because I didn't want to be hurt. And I probably didn't want him to tell me the truth about whatever the situation was. And if that situation was like this, it's going to make me feel this kind of way. Then I'm going to be remembering all the old. So no, you need to talk about like looking at the behaviors, how we engage with life, people, and things. And how do we identify? What does that mean to us? So just finding the meaning, being able to sit with what you're experiencing, being able to name what you're experiencing. So we know the cognitive triangle, right? And there's a thought, there's a emotion that's connected to it, and then oftentimes there's a behavior. And so what is that thought? How is it making you feel sitting with that and understanding what you're feeling, not labeling it, because we don't label stuff.
Yeah.
We just say, I'm mad. But are you really mad, or are you hurt? Are you feeling some guilt or shame?
Yes. And then going back to how you said the why, right? Because that's something to unpack, understanding your why versus like just saying, well, I'm mad, or what's really triggering you. Where is the trigger coming from? Is it coming from, sexual trauma? Is it coming from, and then all of a sudden, this is really why I'm acting the way that I'm acting, or my guard is up the way it's up because this. So the importance of understanding what emotion you're in, why you're in it, and how to unpack it, is key. And that's why I wanted you to answer that question because, sometimes, just being non-emotional. I know my background, especially coming from like in the military, it can be like we all just robots. Everybody's just like, and I'm like, I'm a whole human being, and so, but that's still something to have to unpack too. Getting it out of certain mindsets from like the way you raised and not just the military, because you can go to, any career field and it's just like, I'm in a keep it moving mode. But after a while, soul care is very important. It's like, what about you? Like, how are you processing through life for real?
I love that word, soul care, because that's like, I love that because we do need to move from self-care to soul care. Because we can go get our hair and nails done, but it's done nothing for us. That's just a moment in time. What are you doing to heal your soul? What are you doing? Because when I deal with people, I'll say, give me 5 things that bring a smile to you instantly.
Yeah.
Because that means that's lightening up your soul like nothing else before. Like us getting our nails done, yes, that's like taking care of self. But when you leave, your shoulders may still be up to your ears because you still stressed. What are those things that bring light and love to you without it even being something difficult or hard?
Yes.
Love
Now I'm
that.
gonna get back to. I'm gonna touch on soul care again too, because we about to go. I'm gonna touch on it again. But before I touch on that, because I want to talk about get on your book for just a little bit. My question for your book. So your book talks about or suggests a journey to recovery. And again, you all get the book. I'm gonna have the link to where to get your pre-orders started for her book. It's an amazing book, and her journey is amazing. But can you share a moment when you realized that the grief that you experienced was actually propelling you towards a greater purpose? And I'm not talking about your job. I don't want to get into you being a counselor, just if it's a part of that. But like when you were a child, for example, right? Did you ever feel like, you know what, there's something more for me to do? And I say that because a lot of times people just get, I don't want to say they get too down in their situation, but, trauma is real, and then you have the deep depression and suicide, to where it's just like, you feel like there's no end whatsoever. Life is not for you. I quit, so like, was there anything within you through your journey that just like, what was it that kept you going throughout your personal journey?
And it's funny you brought that up about even being young. I always felt different and I couldn't understand why. I couldn't put my finger on it. And it was always something like, I was like, this not it. Like I grew up living in the projects. I was like, this not it. It's something more. But most people will settle in those 4 walls, right? And I just kept pushing whatever it was. And even growing up in the hood of Milwaukee, I was always the eyeball out and I didn't care about it. They made fun of me. And so we would all just laugh at it. It was just me being a little different all the time. And just knowing always that there was something greater, there was something more, but I never attributed it to myself until like I had children. And so then I looked at my kids and I'm just like, whoa, like this can't be it, because I don't want them to be on the struggle bus. I don't want them to have the struggle story. So what do I have to do? Who am I in Christ? What is he calling me to? And then what am I running from? Because oftentimes we block our blessings by us being afraid, walking in fear, living in fear. But everything, and now as it comes full circle, even this program that I'm in currently, I looked at this program 14 years ago when my daughter was born a preemie. I wanted to understand what happens in utero and how to service those kids who may have been experiencing trauma in utero, like, for example, being in a domestic violence situation and in the mom's womb, the mom having postpartum depression. How does that impact the child after birth? So now I'm learning all this stuff. It was in God's time. I seen it when she was born, but I got the complete scholarship this year. And I'm like, Lord, how does all this work together? But it's in his time. And just being a willing vessel, like I said before, my permissive rule is taken away. But as I started identifying who I am, willing vessel to be in Christ and be obedient, that he already has a purpose. He already has a plan. But me just being humble enough and being able to honor it and stand in it. It don't look good all the time. Currently, it's not looking good. It doesn't always feel good. But I know that on the other side, that the blessing is within the purpose. And then everything I went through was never for me. It was for other people. Because the people that I serve now, and it's like I always say, God, you're so funny. Because the clients that I get, I'm like, whoa. It's sometimes looking in a mirror of a place that I had already been. And so just me being able to hold a space for that pain and not necessarily experiencing the exact same pain, but I'm holding space for it. It gets them like, oh, I'm heard, I'm seen, I'm valued. And so just opening up myself to being submissive to what God has called me to do. Sometimes I don't understand it. Other people will say, you don't see it? And I'm like, no. I'm just doing what the Lord said do.
Okay.
And sometimes it's greater than me.
Listen, now, because I mentioned it earlier, but I did not mention it in your bio. You said that I know where you're from, but for the audience, you live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. But were you born and raised there, or,
Yes.
because you mentioned you were raised in the projects. What was that like? Like, for people that don't, know about your background, touch on a little bit about that, because that's important too for like where you're at now. You're extremely successful, but you know how people say, show me the bottom. Like, how did she get to where she's at? I need to hear this story. So let's go to that story portion, like your background, were you raised, what kind of household were you raised in? One parent, two parent, what was that upbringing for you like?
My parents were teen parents. Both of them were 18 when my mother gave birth to me. We lived with my maternal grandmother and my paternal grandmother. Like they were they're amazing. We're amazing women. And so it was two separate households that I was being traveled to, on different weeks. It wasn't even like, okay, I want my baby. Here's my baby, So that was beautiful within itself. But my parents were teen parents. I lost my father in 1998, 97. And he was a addicted to drugs. And that was like the love of my life, right? I lost my dad. He was the first man in my life that showed me, who I am in a man's eyes. And so to lose him, a lot of things transitioned with me. And just being raised by my mom as a single parent. We lived on 29th and Burleigh. For those of us who know
Yes.
where that's at. And I came from. But, my mother bused me out to different schools. And that's why I was different in the neighborhoods, because I went to suburban schools and I came back to the hood talking proper. And, that's not always welcomed. But they knew who I was as a person because I was born and raised there. Yeah. But that's my bottom. And God is elevating me, to be a business owner, to be a graduate with a bachelor's and a master's degree, and then going for my PhD in clinical psychology because I want to be a representation for our people when we're doing this testing. Because oftentimes we are misdiagnosed, because there's not an understanding there, right?
Yeah.
So just to fill in a gap. And then also getting the certification for women, infants and really families, because women experience, especially women of color, our postpartum depression looks different from other people. Our depression looks different sometimes from other people. So being in those spaces, and it's funny how my life, the things that I've experienced or the things my children have experienced has opened my heart up to like, no, there needs to be representation here. And maybe I'm just one person, but I might impact one person that impacts another person.
Absolutely. I think I had just started on a class too. It was SFDT training, and they had made a mention on addressing people as people. And I like their approach. I like the training they were saying. And I think within that, what I took away from it was instead of quickly trying to diagnose somebody, that's addressing the person as a person. You have to address me as who I am. Like, who am I? So that means, yes, I'm a Black woman. I am a woman of a certain age and so forth. And then what's me versus like how you said in the Black and brown community, there's a lot of misdiagnoses going on. So for sure, it's very important. Now, my next, I want to get to another mention of your chapter, just talk about the abusive relationships and emotional breakdowns. And I'm going to read a little bit from that here too. In this particular portion, he said, trauma didn't just mark my childhood, it shaped the relationships I chose. I could stop right there. I could stop right there. Yes, we could stop right there, but we're going to go on. It says, my self-worth already was fragile, left me vulnerable to an abusive spouse who degraded me with his words. No matter how much I achieved, it was never enough in his eyes. He belittled me even when I earned my master's degree, making me question my abilities and worth. So trauma didn't just mark my childhood, it shaped the relationships I chose. And then we got into, because you really go through that transition and we don't understand what we're going through when we already are impacted by trauma as children, because you're not mentally, there yet, and as you grow and mature in the knowledge of, what you're going through and how to unpack it, that's when all this like comes to light. So, getting into bad relationships or the wrong relationships is going to be a part of the process. It's liable to happen. I'm gonna say it like that, but to touch on a bit about it, let's go there for a minute. Let's unpack that particular that area. Again, I can stop at relationships, and we need to go there. But how does trauma affect not just your relationship, but how does that affect relationships? I think that's important because it will also give us an understanding of how to be empathetic with someone, or just making the right choices when choosing a partner.
Yes, I mean, and I did a group for men, and it was phenomenal. And because of my trauma, I stayed away from not servicing men or, being a clinician to men. But if they came in, of course I would. But this group, I talked about healthy and unhealthy relationships. And I didn't call guys abusers, right? I said causing harm. Because even as women, we can cause harm to other people. But when we're looking at that early development, those early stages, it's how we're socialized. Wow. And sometimes, yes, it can come from child trauma, but also like when we look at the parenting pieces, sometimes our parents can be, and not saying that this was my parents, but I've watched people call their children out of their name, abuse them in particular ways, like not even emotionally, mentally, those types of verbally. And so why wouldn't you choose somebody who calls you out your name or verbally abuse you or belittle you or degrade you when that's all that's the norm. And so like you said, we're more susceptible to finding those types of relationships because that's what I know. Somebody being sweet, kind, and nice, we side eyeing them like what you want for real, and that's not the thing. It's just like understanding like what's healthy, and I do a lot of training around that healthy and unhealthy relationships. Because a lot of people don't think that if my guy isn't treating me a certain way or he's jealous that he doesn't love me, but not understanding that is abusive, that's manipulation, that's power and control. And so if that's what we've seen growing up, and it didn't even have to come from our household, it can come from aunts and uncles, just our community. If those are the things that we've seen and what we've been socialized in, that's what we'll typically choose.
Yeah, because somewhere within yourself, you think it's correct.
Yes. If you haven't seen the opposite. And so because my parents were young, then they eventually got married, but then his addiction took over. So I did see the love and the affection in a relationship. And one of my things was I didn't want to have a broken family. So I sacrificed everything to keep a family together, not understanding that it was damaging the kids on the other end. You know, so if my kids are witnessing and experiencing these things, okay, how are they going to be socialized? Then on the other side, how is that impacting them emotionally, mentally, and physically?
Yeah.
It's not healthy because now they view relationships a different way.
Yeah.
And even though it's different children, everybody experience a particular thing a different way. Because
Yeah.
me and you are going to see the same thing. They're going to see different things and internalize it differently. And so that was even a walk, like
Yeah.
coming out of that and walking through those situations with those kids separately and allowing them to feel what they feel, allowing them to say the things they needed to say to me. Because even as parents, sometimes we're like, you a kid, stay in a kid's place. No, they are little humans and they're experiencing what you have put them in. And now you want them to shut up about it. And now we wonder why they have negative behaviors. They're people.
Yeah. Little, I mean, like you said, they are people, you know, and raising children, we don't understand. I don't have any children myself, but, you know, just from listening to others. And then you have to, I always say, like adults, we have to remember, we have children, remember when you were a child. Like, remember how much you picked up, how much you paid attention to, you know, how much you saw, how much you weren't supposed to see, and like how that impacted you, especially if it was something negative or traumatic, you know, and you know, different generations, like you're saying, I experienced a little bit in my generation, not a lot from my parents, but maybe from uncles and aunts, how would they say, you know, a child should stay in a child's place. Well, what are we teaching with that? What does that mean? Can't talk. Like, you know, when you see something wrong, I can't say anything. So yeah, definitely building on healthier relationships and what we're passing down. And then also too, like you were saying, it's male and female, you know, as far as like what you experience growing up, be it male or female, you know, that's how you are going to show up in all relationships, not just that of romantic relationships, but friendships, you know, parenting relationships as you spoke on. So let's go into more about your book in just I know you have a workbook that you also added to the book.
Excited about that.
That sounds, you know, I love a good workbook, you know, how to apply. It's almost like a little journal that you can just, you know, add to it, you know, have some questions, a little step through. Walk us through like how your book is going to relate to the workbook also and how you want them to pair each of it together.
I'm so excited about that because when I printed it the first time, I only had a few questions at the end of every chapter. But now, because I see the disparities with trauma, right? And we don't understand it, oftentimes we think it's like, oh, I don't have trauma. But a lot of us are walking through here with trauma and we don't even recognize it.
Yeah.
So the workbook, coupled with every chapter, there are questions, there are exercises for every chapter, just to pull out those major parts of that chapter so that you can actually learn and heal and grow and to be able to see yourself in the middle of it and to like really feel the transitions and the changes as you move through it. So I'm so excited about this workbook.
I love that. Now, with the book, and then to add to that, leads me to my next question. So the path for many, like the path for from trauma to purpose, is long and difficult. And you know, we talked about facing our emotions, like not wanting to face our emotions, and so forth. But what advice, in context to trauma in your book and finding your own individual path to healing, what advice would you give to someone who is still deep in grief and unsure of how to turn like that pain into that, you know, purpose of journey? And I don't think that it comes like, oh, I'm going through something, I'm going to be the best selling, you know, like that's not how it happens. You know, but what is that, you know, thing or a special place that you need to find within yourself? What are the steps to get there?
And the biggest one for me is like always the identification piece and not, viewing the trauma as a lesson, viewing your experience as a lesson, and coming from, okay, yep, I was a victim, and moving from that to survivor. Now I'm surviving through this thing, and allowing yourself to feel what you feel. But I always tell people, don't pitch a tent and stay there. Feel what you feel, but don't stay there, because sometimes we'll get stuck in that emotion. We'll get stuck in that heaviness. Yep, that was real. But don't sit there and stay in that. Now, what did it teach you? What lesson were you supposed to learn? Now we move forward in it. What did I learn through this? How did it make me? How did it didn't break me, because I'm still here. And another thing I tell people all the time, you survived 100% of what you've been through, because we're still here, living, breathing humans, whether it's I'm crying all day or whether I got a smile on my face. You survived that thing. You're here today. And so now, what was the lesson? And then also, what was the blessing? Because sometimes I came out with my life. Sometimes I came out with my mind. And so we have to identify those parts and stop looking at the negative pieces of it, because that negativity will run and rule our lives. Now you got to switch it over. And I always tell people, flip it. And we call that cognitive restructuring. So like you flip it, because we all have bad stuff that happens. And I'm not saying that it's not important, but how were you shaped? How were you molded? What was the good that came out of it? Because there's always a silver lining.
Definitely. Then let's go back to soul care, right? Instead of cognitive restructuring, we flipped it. Basically, like giving words to your process, because, words have power, just like, in context of like the scripture in the Bible, life and death are in the power of your tongue. If my situation is I'm depressed, I'm going to say it every single day. I'm depressed. Just be mindful. But soul care, right? So I want to balance that out, because I feel like, as we were talking about, we're both, women of God. We love the Lord. We love us some Jesus, but I want that, because I feel like there's still a lot of push that has to go towards pushing out. Therapy is okay. Counseling is good. I'm hearing a lot of, even pastors saying, well, my therapist said, listen, because you need the balance of, both. And I think for a long time, especially if you come up religious, that may have not been counseling and therapy have not been in a positive light. But it's very important. And if we can touch on that, like to balance both, like you're not minimizing God, you're not a bad Christian, if you're a Christian, if you go to therapy or if you go to counseling, like it's okay, to have the balance of both. And it may not be therapy. It could be, I don't know, taking a class in movements or something like that, movement therapy or something else. I'm just throwing things out there. But let's talk about the balance of both. Like, what do you see, or was there a transition for you, a transition that you see in your clients that they have a hard time with balancing both or incorporating the understanding of, proper soul care in their journeys?
Because the thing that I've noticed too, it's almost like you don't have enough faith if you need to do these other things. No, you have faith. But also we need to talk about some stuff, because sometimes we block it and we don't talk about it. And in some religions, you just go pray about it. Yeah, we got prayer, but we also need to process. Because if we hold it, it's only going to stay in there and grow and grow and grow and get bigger and bigger and destroy you. Because if we got all this stuff that's happening on the inside and we're not, and it's stuck in our brain, stuck in our mind, we're not moving it. It's just there. And so you don't have the opportunity to have a safe space that's not judging the experience, right? Or where you can just be yourself. Because I don't have a gain to you or anything about you. So there's a space for you to be able to say, this is what I'm experiencing. This is how it makes me feel. This is what I want to do about it. And work that thing out within yourself. Whereas like religiously, sometimes there's parameters around that thing, or you're not saved enough. You're not a good Christian if. So you need sometimes that balance of, okay, yeah, this is my soul care. I do pray. I do honor and love the Lord. I have faith, but also I got to release.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that was, so I was looking at the scripture, because there was, that when you were talking, it came to my mind, that scripture where it says, I think it's Proverbs like 24:6, right? Where it says, there is wisdom in a multitude of counselors, right? Seek out others, that will be healthy for you, the individual, because it's all an individual based process. Everybody can't do the same exact thing. But there's wisdom in getting counsel, outside of, the church setting. And again, church is the building. We all go together, but the important thing is that relationship. If you have a relationship with God, that's the importance. And then if I'm going to go and also get counsel from a therapist, I need to do that too. Like, the individual person, or if you go see a doctor for certain things, I'm going to go see this doctor for my knee. I'm not going to just, it's different. There's different, areas of expertise, that you may need to, divert to, and it's okay.
And I'm so glad you brought that part up, because my original PhD was going to be in director of integrated behavioral health. And that focuses on mind, body, soul, right? Mm-hmm. And so oftentimes we separate it, like our physical health, we separate it from our mental health. Yeah. But like and my passion is, physically, we go to the doctor annually, right? Or like you said, if my knee hurt, I'm going to that knee doctor. If my foot hurt, I'm going to the podiatrist. Mm-hmm. What about your brain? What about your head? If you have heart problems, you go to the heart doctor. But what if I can't get rid of these thoughts and these emotions? We know God is the healer too, but he also created, the other areas that can help us manage and pull through.
Yes. Which is so true, because it's like, it's so much stuff that goes on in your brain, right? Like you were saying, it's your brain. So it doesn't mitigate anything that's outside of faith. God wants us to have faith in many different things, but the brain operates in a certain way. So like for me, counseling or therapy is like educating myself on how my brain is working right now, like what is going on within my brain. And then understanding, okay, I need prayer in this area, pray over all things, of course, but, now what do I need to really seek out? Who do I need to seek out for my mental health, is key. And I believe, wholeheartedly could have probably saved us all coming up, that have been impacted by trauma. If our parents would have went to therapy,
right.
Listen, for their own trauma, and I'm saying that for their own particular trauma, instead of just like, keeping it moving. I'm gonna go on with life. This happened, but what happened in our family is staying in our family. And, I might just take this to the grave with me, and that's it, So, I feel like that season of life is over, hopefully, and it's being stumped out within our generation and, the generation that's coming behind us and that's here to this day. So, but yeah.
And I love that we're taking away the stigma that mental health is part of your health, and that we're destigmatizing that you're crazy, because you're not crazy.
No.
We all have things that we need to work on. And like you said, just like if I have a knee problem, I'm going to that doctor to see that. If I have thinking errors, I need to go work on those.
Yes. So perspective, on everything is key. And it just being okay. And then also know it's okay to give yourself permission to do that, and live and be, God gave us all a life to manage, and how you manage your life. Please be sure that you're not just, following one way of doing something for you as an individual when it comes to, and I'm speaking of faith and, mental health. Don't be stuck, in one lane, because there's more than one lane to get to healing. Now, I have an additional question that I wanted to throw in. I was like, as I was getting ready for the podcast, I was like, I have so much I want to ask Patrice. I've been trying to narrow everything down into one thing, into like not so much. I'm not overwhelming you, I should say, with questions. But for this particular question, it's like combined with what I just asked you before about your what you're doing now as a counselor. Do you feel like in the greater perspective of things as you were going through life, do you feel like counseling is a job for you? Or do you feel like it's more of a calling? And if it's a calling, at what part of your journey did you know that you were being called to the work that you're doing? As it was, necessary for you, Patrice, to be doing this particular, job as you grew from, okay, the pain I was in, I'm coming to a sense of purpose. Now I know what I'm supposed to be doing. And did you have any fear or anything within you saying like, I don't know about this. Like, I don't think this is for me. Were there moments when the journey got hard? But not to make my question too long, but what was that process for you? Like, is counseling a job for you, or was it a calling? And if so, how did you get there?
No, I originally wanted to go to school to be a computer science engineer.
Okay.
So far from that, right? Because I
Yeah.
wanted to go make money, and so no, I ended up going into school, and and things happened. My path started shifting, and like I always say, my kids have always been like the marker for my growth, or this will line up with that. So no, it was not something that I went into thinking that I was going to do. It's been a calling. And as I do it, it's never like work for me. I love doing it. I go in every day to serve people, and I enjoy it. And it's not, I never would have thought that I would be saying that, there was other jobs that I had doing this particular thing that I didn't enjoy, but it was the what do you call it? The process of the organization. And so my thing is, if we're going to do it, we need to do it for the people so that they're truly getting what they need. And so that's why I really stepped out on my own to do it myself, because I wanted to be able to provide those services, like without the bounds of other regulatory issues. So with that being said, yes, there's struggles with it. There's times where, not that I'm tired in it, but it's like things can become overwhelming because you see a greater need. You can't feel that need, but there's other things that need to happen in order to create open doors for other things to happen. So yes, it can be tiring. It can be hard, but if it's that thing that you get up for every day that you don't mind doing, that it brings you joy, like I never call it work. I've done it for free so much. And my biller is on me about that, but but I love what I do, and I love it because I know it's greater than me. Because if I can just reach 2 people, that's beautiful.
Now, did you find yourself before getting into or deciding to go into the profession? Like, did you find yourself where people were just naturally drawn to you, telling you their business, and you're like, you know what, let me go into counseling? Like, was that like a reassurance, like this is what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah, it was like a natural fit, because I could go to a store and someone would just drop a whole story on me. People always say, I never know. Like, I just had another young lady. She was in a crisis situation, and she was like, I don't know you. I'm not telling you all my business. And I was like, okay, fine. I'm just here to help. Next thing I know, everything came out, and she was like, I don't even know why I'm telling you this. And so that's when I'm like, I know it's not me. It's the Holy Spirit. And so it's like helping, that part helps me in it. Like I use my helper to get me through, because those stories are not easy. They're heavy. And so I have to be able to release, and meaning like therapy, church, prayer, all of those things I have to utilize to ensure that I'm okay as I'm moving through this process.
Yeah. I definitely feel like, whatever you do, it's important to be called to what you do. Like I know what I'm not called to do. I'm not going to sign up for it. I just know it's not in me to do it. Like, don't ask me to do it. Like some are called to be nurses, some are lawyers, some are, even, military. You have people that say, I've wanted to be a soldier all my life. That was not me. I just, it was a job for me. I enjoyed it. But to, like you were saying, like the young lady that just started talking to you and at first she didn't plan on doing it. I feel like God puts in you certain things that are already in you, before the foundation of this world, we were entered in a certain type of way. And then, life happens. And then he uses, our journey to help others. Like how you were saying earlier, God, you funny. Like, you're so funny. Like how my life is playing out. But it's so true. So I just wanted to touch on that too, for somebody that may be feeling like, how do I know like what I'm supposed to be doing in life? Like what are the signs? What are some of the ways for me to understand that? And one of the things that I remember, even on my process, I was in prayer asking God, like, what am I supposed to be doing, in my life? Because, the military was feeling like it was ending. And then I came across a program on television, and the guy that was talking, he was like, he just happened to be talking about that subject. That's one of those God moments where you're like, okay, Lord, you really listening to me real hard right now. But then he mentioned, he was saying, if you're trying to discover your purpose, in life and what you're supposed to be doing, do what comes natural to you, what comes naturally to you. And it was just, like this portion right here, as I'm in my counseling journey as well. It's like, oh, okay, I was supposed to be counseling people. Like, I get it, So let's do a quick, I'm sorry, let me add this real quick. This is important. I wanted to add this particular thing, and I meant to add it before I asked that question, but I love this quote. So there's this quote by Viola Davis, and it says, "May you live long enough to know why you were born." I feel like that's so, impactful, because if you've had any difficulty in life, like, your pain is not your destiny. Like, the trauma is not your destiny. So don't, I don't want people to get into that or come out of that mindset if you feel like that, where I don't, there's no way, out of it. I wanted them to hear like your process and your journey, so they can understand. Because again, you're a successful woman. You've gone through trauma. You've gone through pain. And that now look at you now. You're an author, writing this book even to help others along their along their particular journey. Is this something that you have ever saw yourself doing at the point or in the point of trauma?
No, not in a million years. Because, and even sitting here talking about this stuff, no. I like to play the background. I like to be the one helping over here in the corner somewhere. And it's just hilarious how God has me on different podcasts, have me presenting at conferences. I'm like, what? One conference I presented 3 different times. I submitted the proposal and got all 3. And I was like, okay, Lord, now you have to be my strength through this, because I am afraid. But this is not what I thought. That this was not the plan I had for myself. So I had to release the power, my control, my thoughts, to be like, okay, you got me here. Now you got to take me the rest of the way, because I don't know what we're doing.
Listen, it's so crazy how you can be on a particular journey too, and like, with your plan, and then all of a sudden God's like, now you've been praying, you're praying, Lord, let your will be done, and you were like, I wasn't really serious, like I was just playing, like I was, like, but you understand, like, your words, like you mean it, you mean well, until those words really kick in. I feel like, and you take those words serious, like, no, let your will be done for real, Lord. But I love how like God will just transition us through that process, bringing us into greater, for him. So
and I always laugh, because I'm like, he know his children. He know that I'm gonna go kicking, hollering, and screaming, and so he gives me glimpses. He doesn't give me the whole picture. I get part, because then, okay, all right, this is the part of it. But if he gives me the whole, or like if he would have told me what I had to go through to get here, I would have probably just been the disobedient child, right?
That part. Okay. That part. Listen, all of us, I don't think any of us can handle, the bulk of everything. Like, guys, like, okay, you want to know? You really want to know? Like, here you go. Like, no.
The fuck no.
No, as
I'm
much as
good.
I like order and organization, as much as I think that I want to know, I'm good with how he is doing it now. All right, now I want to do a little speed round with you here. I got some questions. I'm still firing at you. Answer however you answer. I got 3 questions for you, okay?
Okay.
Are you ready to play? Are you ready to play, sis?
Yes.
All right. What is your go-to nail shape when you get a manicure? Is it square, almond, or stiletto?
Ballerina.
Ballerina. I love that one. That's cute too. Okay. To my second question, if you could only eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Lasagna.
Ooh, from scratch or store-bought?
Scratch. I love it.
Okay. Third question and final question. What is your favorite way to unwind after a long day? Is it Netflix, a good book, or something else?
It's always a hot shower and then lay down and watch some TV. Something funny, something very
Ooh,
comical.
that hot shower is key. Like, I don't know if it's just the ladies, but
I have to wash my day off, and that's what I envision. Like everything that I don't feel okay if I do not take a shower before getting in my bed.
yes, that's me.
My friends tease me. They're like, okay, you had to take a shower. Yes, I did. I got to take a shower to wash my day off, and then I can comfortably get in my bed and look at TV and just kind of just veg out,
Yes.
because I've been talking all day.
Yes, I'm the same way. I'm like, it's something about that shower. It's something about like it took the day from me. So I'm the same way. So definitely. All right. So before we close out, go ahead, please, and let our audience know like your social media handles. Everything's gonna be dropped in the description as well for you all to click and follow Patrice. But go ahead and let them know your social media handles and anything else that I did not mention or I left out. How can they get the book? Also, you're gonna the pre-orders. When does that start and so forth?
So the book will officially be, we're pushing for March 1st, Women's History Month. So we're going to start the pre-orders January 1st, so that we can see who's interested, who wants it, but it's there on my site already. So if you want to get started now, and so my website is www.macbethconsulting.com. My social medias are Macbeth Consulting and Patrice McBeath on both Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome. And I am definitely going to get my revised copy. I'm gonna put just your website up here at the end so that all can see. Again, her website is there. I'm gonna have it in the description. But I'm gonna get my revised copy of the book since you put some new stuff in there. I had to read it because when I was reading the first one, you know how like when you're in counseling, I was like, wait a second now.
Right. Yes, and I'm so excited about this workbook. The workbook isn't up yet, but I'm working on the cover and the layout and like just making sure all the questions and everything in there is because I really want people to work through it.
Yeah, that part, right? Because you have to work through it. Don't be scared of the work that you have to do, but you definitely have to work through your process. It's a good thing at the end, each phase of it, I think. And let's speak to that real quick. So tell people if you had something to encourage them about the work that goes to it so they don't be afraid of it so we can stop hiding from handling our emotions and dealing with our process and stop passing on all these bad generational cycles that some of us, we started that, it's not anything spiritual. It's something that we pass down. Give somebody some parting advice on that whole process so they can embrace it in a healthy way.
To me, the biggest thing is don't be afraid of who you are and who you can become. And just not allowing yourself to get stuck in where you've been and what has happened, because there's greater outside of that. You're a walking, living testimony. You have a story to tell. We all do. And don't be ashamed of what you have experienced, because it makes you greater. It makes you bolder. it gives you, and I always tell people too now, like it provides you like with a superpower, because when you have experienced certain things, you can sense it on other people. And so sometimes you may have been called into that area to be able to pull somebody else out in their moments of hopelessness, because you know what to do. You know what you did to get out of it. So I'm just going to encourage you to speak your truth about who you are, and also seek help, the help that you need.
I love that. Listen, that is our time, everyone. Again, go and follow the links for Patrice McBeath. Follow her social media. Follow her. Get the book, pre-order it. I promise you it will bless your life. And so that you can start to do the work, because she has provided a workbook. So now you have those helpful steps, no excuses. You have those helpful steps that can guide you along through your own personal journey of healing through your trauma. All right, you guys, that's our time. And don't forget to subscribe if you have not subscribed to the podcast yet. And we will, I always say we, like all my guests are coming back, child. Listen, I will see you until next week. Let me just say it. Until next week, you all. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.